This is Join Us in France, episode 256. Bonjour, I'm Annie Sargent, and Join Us in France is the podcast where you'll hear pragmatic advice for your next trip to France. Hopefully, you'll get inspired to go beyond Paris and enjoy the rest of France too. On today's episode, my guest Greg and I talk about a little-known place called Chateau-Thierry in the north of France. It's just a little northeast of Paris in the Aisne department, in the Marne Valley and the Hauts-de-France region. There are about 15,000 inhabitants in Chateau-Thierry today. Now, I say Chateau-Thierry is little known, but if you're a U.S. Marine, you've probably heard of it because this was the place where major World War I battles took place and where U.S. Marines came to life as a specific branch of the military. I had no idea until Greg contacted me offering to talk about it. So I'm very grateful for that. I am publishing this episode on November 10th, 2019, and tomorrow, November 11th, is the National Day for Remembrance of Victory and Peace in France, and it is a national holiday. I think it is very important that we remember World War I, which is hard for me to say, World War I. La Première Guerre mondiale. It's so much easier in French, folks. Because of the devastation that it caused. As bad as World War II was, it didn't come close in terms of human loss. We live in a world full of political anxiety, and I think constant access to news really pushes our buttons. But let's put things into perspective. Compared to 1918, the world is amazingly peaceful. The poorest countries in the world are lifting themselves out of poverty at an amazing rate. We all live longer and healthier. Fewer of our children die in childhood, and a lot fewer men and women die in battle. The world is actually getting more peaceful. And it is my hope that we can keep it that way by remembering the sacrifice of those who came before us, including both of my grandfathers, and I am sure many of yours as well, who showed us the way to a better existence. They were caught in a terrible war, and we don't have to be. Join Us in France is a listener-supported podcast, both financially and for the content of the podcast. If you have an idea for an episode, email me, Annie@joinusinfrance.com, and we'll talk about it because I'm in this to rediscover my own country, and you all, collectively, listeners, have been to so many places that I've never even heard of. You make the show great, and I thank you for your support and participation. If you are interested in this episode, take a look at the map on the front page of joinusinfrance.com and click on the north and northeast part of France. That's how you'll find all the episodes where we talk about this area. And if you'd like to see the show notes and Greg's extensive guest notes about this topic, go to joinusinfrance.com/256, numbers 256. Bonjour, Gregory, and welcome to Join Us in France.
Bonjour, Annie.
How are you?
Good. Glad to be here.
I know it's bright and early in California as we record this.
It's still nighttime here.
Oh, goodness. Sorry about that. See the dedications, okay. The dedication of my listeners. It's wonderful.
I was just going to say I'm dedicated to your podcast. So
thank you so much. Thank you. So on today's episode, we are recording about a point. A specific battle of the First World War, because this is the anniversary of the end of First World War, and I wanted to mark the I don't know what you call it, the event, marked the occasion. Let's put it that way.
Yes, yes.
And you had done a lot of research about a specific battle called Belleau Woods.
That's correct.
Yes, and it has a lot to do with the Marines, which I knew absolutely nothing about. So why don't you take it away and give us some background about this and why it's interesting to go visit this place?
Okay. Well, I am a U.S. Marine veteran, and one of the things that all Marines have to learn when they go through boot camp, without exception, officer or enlisted, is the history of the Marine Corps. And I don't know if you've noticed it or not, but when you're living in the United States, you'll see a lot of cars with Marine Corps stickers on them. Sure. Because out of all the branches of the military, the Marine Corps is the most obsessive about, membership and history. Anyway, one of the big battles we all had to learn about was the Battle of Belleau Wood, which is, over in France. And ever since I got out of the Marine Corps, I didn't make it a career or anything, but ever since I got out, I've been interested in going to Belleau Wood. Mm-hmm. And last year was the 100th anniversary of this battle, and it normally coincides with Memorial Day weekend in France. Mm-hmm. So a good friend of mine at work, a fellow by the name of Dana, is a retired Army colonel, and he was interested in going to France for seeing this battle and the ceremony, but also later on, we spent a second week over in Normandy, although that's a different topic. Right,
that would be Second World War, which is also very interesting.
Yes. As an aside, I might also add, too, that if you're in Normandy during the week preceding D-Day landing date there, the people there are just enormously friendly towards Americans. I mean, I've never experienced this, but people actually in both places, in the town of Chateau-Thierry and in Normandy, during these times, these dates, complete strangers would come up to us on the streets and ask us, "Are you an American?" And then, if we said yes, they'd try to practice their English. They'd whip out pictures of their ancestors and say, "Oh, my grandmother was saved by an American soldier," or wow. they just loved telling their little stories about what happened during either war. Yes. So anyway, getting back to this Battle of Belleau Wood, millions of soldiers on both sides were killed, and then in 1917, the U.S. decides to get involved. Well, in 1917, the United States didn't have much of an army. They had a few thousand troops that had fought against Mexico and maybe out in the Philippines, but they really didn't. They had no standing army.
Wow, that's hard to believe, isn't it? I mean, things have changed so much.
Oh, yeah. They start putting this army together piecemeal, and they have to do it in Western France. They're just constantly landing all these troops in France, stationing them in Western France, while French and British officers try to sort of train them in what to expect when they get to the battlefields out in Eastern France. Mm-hmm. But there's one exception to this, and this is the United States Marine Corps, which, as you may or may not know, was a fighting force that was mainly attached to the United States Navy. And they were stationed all over the world, and they were constantly engaged in these little, what they called banana wars. Like protecting American legations in China during the Boxer Rebellion, fighting against little insurgencies in the Philippines. Okay, that was what they did, and nobody knew whether or not the United States Marine Corps could fight in an actual modern industrial war against a modern army such as Germany's. Which, Germany, everyone kind of agrees that Germany had the best army at the time, despite the fact that they were running out of people by 1917 and running out of material.
Mm-hmm. Well, all of these armies were running out of people. By 1917, a lot of people had died, but yeah.
Oh, yeah. So anyway, Germany concluded their peace with Russia in 1917, and it freed up all these troops to go out to the west. And Germany decided around May of 1917 they're going to make one final push towards Paris. The closest they ever got was to this place called Belleau Wood, which is about 50 miles outside of Paris. So, 20 more miles, and they would have been able to sit there and shell Paris all day long.
Wow.
So at the time, they had reached Belleau Wood, and the little town of Chateau-Thierry, which is much bigger now. It's the county seat. The American Army wasn't really ready to fight them, but the American Army did have 2 regiments of U.S. Marines who were ready. So the French general in charge of the operation, lacking a French army, decided, well, let's toss these Marines into the mix and see if we can't stop the Germans.
Huh.
So one thing that every American Marine learns in boot camp is the United States Marine Corps saved France in 1918 by stopping the German army, by being the only unit that could stop the German army from getting to Paris. And they did so at a place called Belleau Wood. So these Marines got the call up to go and stop them, and you can go visit this battle site today. It has been absolutely preserved for the last 100 years, because after the battle, the French government or somebody, the military or somebody, decided to donate the entire battlefield to the United States Marine Corps in honor of what they had done. So if you want to go see a World War I battlefield that has sat undisturbed for the last 100 years, Belleau Wood is the place to go.
That's great.
You can go there and you'll still see all the trenches, all the bomb holes. In fact, all of the trees are still standing that received all of these wounds from all of the shrapnel and the bombs and the bullets from 100 years ago. Right. And you can see where the trees have grown their own scars over all of this damage.
So is it within the city limits of Chateau-Thierry, or is it kind of rural?
It's kind of rural. It's out, I want to say, maybe about 7 or 8 miles northwest of Chateau-Thierry. Okay. It's very easy to find. There's a main route. The main route that goes from Chateau-Thierry to Soissons goes past this monument.
Okay. And so you do need a car to get there.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I don't see how you could do it otherwise. Well, maybe if you rented a bicycle, except Chateau-Thierry is not really a tourist town, so I didn't see any place to rent a bicycle.
Right. Okay.
Plus you'd have to go uphill the entire way, because Chateau-Thierry is at the bottom of a valley.
I see. So maybe get an electric assist bike. That's what I would do.
Something like that. Yeah, something like that.
Okay.
So anyway, 2 things exist at Belleau Wood. One is the battleground, which my friend Dana, who's more familiar with land measurement, estimated the size of the battlefield to be just about 10 acres. I don't know if you know how big that is or not, but
yeah, I have an idea.
You can easily walk across it, assuming no one's there trying to kill you.
Yeah.
You can easily walk across it in about 45 minutes.
Yeah, would it be like a couple of football fields? Few football fields?
More like, I would say 8 football fields pressed together. Okay. Yeah. And this hill called Belleau Wood is surrounded, as is everything in this part of France, it's surrounded by these huge, rolling, absolutely beautiful wheat fields. Mm-hmm. And it's the same today as it was 100 years ago. This is where all the wheat that everybody eats in Paris comes from. Mm-hmm.
Probably the rest of France, too. They do produce a lot of wheat in that area,
Yeah, just lots and lots of wheat fields. Getting back to the history of this battle, mm-hmm. The Marines were lined up on the other side of one of these giant wheat fields. I think I sent you a couple of pictures of that. And the Germans were dug in all on this hill, and the Marines were ordered to march across the wheat field in formation and attack the hill, retake the hill. Wow. And so, if you've ever been to Gettysburg, you'll see it was absolutely a ridiculous order. The French generals warned the American generals, you don't attack people in this war like that, because they'll just get mowed down by machine guns. Right. And all the other modern weapons. But the Marine officers decided, no, this is the way we're going to show everybody, that we have no fear. Mm. Well, it resulted in hundreds of Marines being killed just walking up to the hill.
Wow.
So they quickly learned their lesson and decided, gee, maybe we should take the advice of the French generals who have been doing this for 3 years. And so when they finally made it into the woods after suffering hundreds of casualties, the battle raged on for 3 weeks. And when you go to the woods, you can see why this would happen, because these woods, like all the woods I've been through in France, it's a very dense wood. It actually reminds me, I think, of the kind of jungle fighting that people had to do in the Pacific during World War II, because it's just very, very densely packed. You just don't think of these kinds of woods existing in modern Europe. You think maybe all these kinds of woods have been cut down, but they haven't. They've all been sort of shrunk, I guess, by the nobility that used to reserve them for hunting preserves.
Right, exactly. And we do have very dense woods, especially up there where it rains a fair amount. I mean, these areas get plenty of water, unlike the South, where we have more scrub, shorter kind of trees.
Yeah. Okay. Well, as an aside too, if you want to see how these woods just got utterly obliterated, you can go out east to Verdun, which we did that as well. And I have to tell you, going to the ossuary at Verdun and that monument out there is really a humbling experience, because that whole part of France, it looks like a slow atom bomb went off over there. And, they're still digging up bones and unexploded bombs over there. Yeah,
it's terrible. That whole World War I was unspeakable, And the crazy thing is, nobody really wanted a war. It just happened. It's really hard to put your finger on it. Things just developed in a way that they couldn't stop it, but it was just so bad.
Yeah. Yeah, sort of spontaneous combustion. Mm-hmm. Yeah, like somebody had just piled up a bunch of oily rags in the garage, and then a spark came from somewhere.
A lot of attitude from all the different people and all that. So it was. Yeah.
Okay, so anyway, getting back to the battle, it took them 3 weeks to finally secure the area. Thousands of people died. To this day, I think there are about 1,600 Americans, mostly Marines, but some soldiers and sailors, that are buried in the monument that is now at the base of this hill. I sent you some of the pictures.
Are they identified? Yeah. Some of them are?
Yes, right. But in that tower that you see that stands over the cemetery, in there are inscribed all the names of the missing whose bodies were never recovered. Right. And I might add, they estimate there are still over 1,600 dead still in the woods. Wow. So the local tour guide that gave us a tour said that the local people won't camp out in this in this area because it's kind of spooky at night.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
But what's amazing is that this area exists, and very few Americans, other than people that have been in the Marine Corps, know about this area.
Right. Actually, it's difficult to, I guess, as First World War is over 100 years ago now, and it's getting harder and harder to get people to pay attention to it because it was so long ago. There is hardly anybody alive left. I'm not sure if there are any French people. There might be a couple, but, it's very unusual to run into a survivor, a soldier who fought in this war.
Yeah.
My grandparents who fought in this war have long passed, So it's hard to get people's attention, but it's also really important to not forget because it was just devastating. And I think another way you can see this is when you go to any French village. Look at the list of the dead from that village, and it's usually a very long list for a very small village.
Right. And what does it say? Mort pour la France.
Yeah. Or à nos morts.
Yeah. Oh,
you could see either one.
That's another thing too. You can go out to around Verdun, and you'll see the the villages that say "Mort pour la France," because the entire village was destroyed and it's never been reoccupied.
Right. No, it was terrible. And then, of course, right on the heel of First World War came the Spanish flu, and that killed a bunch of people as well. So it was just a bad time to be born. There's a lot of luck in where we are born and when we're born.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so getting back to Belleau Wood and the nearby town of Chateau-Thierry, I had always wanted to go, but I started trying to do some research on the internet, and there was almost nothing. I finally stumbled onto, I should say that was last year. There's more now since they had their 100th anniversary. Yeah. But last year there was very little about what they're going to do there, places to stay, things like that. So I had to research most of it on my own. But one website that I did find that was very helpful was the American Battle Monuments Commission, abmc.gov, which is the American agency that is responsible for maintaining all of the overseas
memorial sites.
Monuments, cemeteries, all these various places where people have fought, and that was very helpful. At least just to find out what's going to be happening on a certain date. I might also add too that if you have a relative that fought in any of these battles, World War I or II, or even something unrelated to those wars, but say perhaps the Korean War, and you contact them ahead of time and show some kind of proof that you're related to somebody in the cemetery, they will assign special seating just for you during the cemetery, or rather during
the ceremony.
Yeah, during. Right.
That's great. So, where did you stay for this? How many days did you stick around this area?
The first time I went was for Memorial Day in 2018, and I made the big mistake of not booking my room until, I want to say, 3 weeks before we left. In fact, I booked the flight before I booked the room. And by the time I got around to looking for a place to stay in the nearby town of Chateau-Thierry, everything was booked up. It's kind of an open secret for Marine veterans that this is, like their big party every year. So I ended up having to stay in a very nice hotel in Soissons, which, although it was nice, I did learn quickly that even nice hotels in France don't have air conditioning.
Yeah, not necessarily. Some of them do, but up in the north of France, you have to check. If you want that, you have to check.
Yeah, but the nice thing about this hotel in Soissons, and I think I gave you the name of it on my outline.
I think you did.
The nice thing about it was right across the street from their cathedral, which is not restored.
Right.
It is still standing, damaged from World War I. And one of the things you can do is you can go over there and look at the walls and just see the enormous amount
damage
of just you can just envision just the incredible amount of metal that people were throwing at each other around this cathedral for it to have so many pockmarks all over the walls. And I don't know, I don't think there are that many places in eastern France that are still like that. Most of it has been just, torn down or restored.
Right. But the problem with this one is that it looks like they've braced. So it looks like the front doors, the portal of the cathedral is still standing. And then off to the side, there's probably a cloister or something, I would assume, just from looking at it. And the only thing that's left is this front part of the cathedral. Everything behind it is gone. And a lot of churches, people don't realize this, but a lot of cathedrals have been lost in France, either during the French Revolution or from neglect. They just didn't do the repairs and things got worse and worse to the point where they couldn't anymore. Or during First and Second World War, the Germans were pretty fond of bombing churches.
Yeah. Well, this cathedral in Soissons, which supposedly is on the site where the first king of France was crowned.
Okay.
I think, wasn't that Clovis?
Yeah, Clovis, yeah.
Yeah. He was crowned in Soissons. Okay. And,
yeah, that's true. That's a vague memory from elementary school.
Right. And both the city of Soissons and Chateau-Thierry they're not really set up for tourism. Chateau-Thierry anticipates their deluge of Americans one time a year, but most of the time, they're just farm towns.
It's quiet. It's not very large towns, I assume. Like Soissons, I don't know the population of Soissons, but I'm gonna guess fewer than 50,000. I'm gonna look it up.
Yeah. That sounds about right. One of the most interesting things I found about Soissons is I went to France hoping to practice my French, and then I got out to Soissons, and people out there are not speaking standard French.
Oh, really?
I found, just the more I got away from the center of town, the more I heard people speaking their local dialect. And it was very hard for me to understand.
Okay, so Soissons has 28,466 inhabitants in 2016. So say 29,000, give or take. It's not a very large place.
Yeah, you could walk across the entire city, I would estimate, in probably an hour.
But it's big enough to have a few hotels, I'm sure, and
yes,
a few things that you can visit and what have you. But it's not one that comes up a lot when discussing, tourism in France. I must admit, probably this is the first mention of Soissons on the podcast.
Yeah, unless you're just like a huge history of King Clovis, there's really no reason to go there.
Well, Charlemagne was apparently born in Soissons in 742.
Well, there you go. Then.
That's pretty. They got something to work with here. They could, I don't know why they don't. Put much emphasis on that, as far as I know. So what else did you do in the area besides visit the memorial site and attend ceremonies? What else did you visit? How many days did you stay around there?
The first time that we went, we stayed in Soissons for a week. And we took one day trip out to Verdun, and we stopped in Reims on the way back. And we went to the ossuary. There's a great World War I museum out in Verdun, but it was closed when we went out there. But you can easily spend a day in Verdun. We also went to one of the forts of World War I. There are several forts out on the eastern battle line, and one of them that we went to was Fort Douaumont, I think was the name of it. Yes.
Douaumont.
Right.
Something like that.
And that was extremely interesting and or depressing, depending on how you want to look at it. But you can go down into the fort. Most of it is still standing, and the living conditions that people had to endure in these forts.
Terrible.
It was just terrible. People are living like moles in these caves, and I can't imagine what it must have been like to fight a battle in these horrible conditions with people jumping down into these corridors with flamethrowers and just hell on earth. It was just awful.
Yeah. So there are a lot of memorial sites on the eastern, kind of northeastern part of France. And we did an episode, it was episode 211 last year, where we listed several World War I memorial sites in France. But there are so many because there were so many battles everywhere. So Belleau Wood was not one we had mentioned. And I'm sure there's many, many, many more that we've never mentioned. I think if you're really into that sort of discovery of World War I, you'd have to get a map and see where they all are, because there's a bazillion of them.
Yeah, but I might also add too that many times we would just be driving on a road, and there's the French were very good at signage on the roads and letting you know there's something to see over there concerning World War I or things like that. So because of that, we discovered these two enormous works of art that sit out in the middle of these huge wheat fields, and it's on the road between Chateau-Thierry and Soissons. And I sent you a couple
the photos
of
look lovely. Those. There's one where it looks like it's a bronze sculpture of a soldier carrying another soldier.
Right.
And there's one where it's several soldiers standing around or standing straight.
Okay, it's supposed to represent all the groups of people that died in the war. And so, of course it has soldiers there, but it also has, farmers, students, children, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. And if you go visit these works of art, you've got them all to yourself. They're free.
Oh, sure.
Nobody goes to see them.
Well, yeah, unless you're touring around the area where you'll stop, but you're never going to have a big number of visitors all at once, unless it's a memorial, it's a ceremony, something's happening. Yeah.
Right. I might also add there's another American World War I memorial cemetery on the road from Chateau-Thierry to Soissons, and that's the Oisen cemetery. Yes,
and you sent me photos of that too.
Yes. Very, very nice. They have a ceremony there every Memorial Day as well. And as far as I could tell, the only people that attended that ceremony, we went there and we got there a little late, but the only people that attended it was a platoon of Marines and all the local people, all the local farmers. Yeah. I guess that's sort of the one interesting thing that happens in their area every year. Yeah,
you sent me some good pictures, and I will use them to illustrate this episode, because it's interesting to see all of that. What I wanted to ask you is 5 days in Soissons too long?
It's not too long if you're interested in going to see all the stuff out east. It's a good base for going to see Verdun and Reims and things like that.
But you're going to spend some time in the car if you do it that way. Yeah.
Right. But and I might also add, I'm sure there's good public transportation out in that part of France, but I didn't see much evidence of it. No. Frankly,
rural places in France don't have public transportation to go to these, because, like you said, there's never a crowd. I mean, unless it's a big event, it's never crowded, so I wouldn't count on that at all.
Right.
I mean, the local, for example, I'm sure they have transportation for children to get to the high school, because a lot of these kids who live in these rural places, they don't have a high school locally, so their department or their region will organize transportation for teenagers to get to the high school. But that's not for visitors. Right. So there are things like that for everyday life in these places, but they wouldn't work for visitors.
I don't think they even had Uber out in this part of France.
No, well, it's not that they don't have it. I mean, they could have it, but you'd have to have people sign up to be Uber drivers, and they don't want to do that. They wouldn't make any money. They'd make money on the few days when there's a lot of visitors, but that's it. So why? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, you definitely need a rental car for that. And I published an episode. People who are a little hesitant to drive in France should get over that. It's not that difficult. The biggest difficulty is that the roads are narrow, and so you have to slow down. You have to, when you go by another car, you have to slow way down, because they might be really comfortable on that road, and they might whiz past you like, whoa, that was too fast.
Yeah. I might add, it was my first time driving in France, and I wish the car rental companies would hand out a brochure telling you what the signs mean. Because because I'd be driving all over the place, and I'm seeing these signs. I have no idea what they mean. Right. in Soissons, I literally ended up going down the wrong way, some one-way streets, because I didn't know what the sign meant.
You didn't recognize the sign. Yeah, so I did. I think it was episode 16 that where I show several of the signs, but I'm now turning that into an ebook because there's very little resource for Americans and Canadians who want to drive in France. There's a lot of stuff that's meant for English people. So, they discuss driving on the other side of the road and they compare the signs in England to the signs in France. But I'm talking mostly to a North American audience. And so the book is going to be specifically for North Americans. And there's not much there to talk about this. But it's really not that hard.
It's funny. At the hotel we were staying at, I ended up asking the front desk clerk, who didn't speak much English and I didn't speak much French, but I would end up drawing a picture of the sign for him, and he would tell me what it meant, and then he asked me, I forget if it was in French or English, but I understood him perfectly. He says, "Isn't it the same in America?"
Yeah, right.
And he was just shocked to find out, no, it's not the same. It's totally different.
No, it's not the same at all. And in America, you have a lot fewer signs than we do in France. The French roadways they're full of signs. And in America, by comparison, you have a sign every few kilometers or a few miles. It's really very different in that regard.
Yeah.
But once you get the gist of it, it's not so hard.
No, it was easy. And I must add, I came to appreciate French roundabouts because if you're not quite sure which exit to take, you can just stay in the roundabout until you figure it out.
You might surprise.
You just keep going around. And
you
around.
might surprise the other drivers who assume you're going to get off soon. But if you use your blinkers and you're just blinking, left, they'll get it. Oh, this guy's lost reading the signs.
Yeah.
That's what we do. I never tried to do a U-turn. I just wait for the next roundabout. It's easier.
Yes. Yep.
So let's see. Let's see what other practical kind of hotel and restaurant and touristy things you can recommend in the area.
Okay. Well, the French restaurants in Soissons, they were all good, but I must confess, because my French was so bad, I made a point of trying to eat in as many immigrant-run restaurants as possible, like Indian restaurants, Chinese restaurants. And the reason I did that, because I had this thinking, well, if my French is so bad, and I go in there and they just got to France a couple of years ago, their French can't be that good either.
Okay, I follow you.
Yeah.
But there's not that many. There's Moroccan restaurants, Chinese restaurant possibly, but you're not going to find that many.
Actually, in Soissons, I found a very, very good Chinese restaurant.
Oh, there you go.
It was, just down around the corner from the hotel, and it was comparable to anything you would find in California. Cool. Yeah.
Just don't go looking for Mexican restaurants in France.
I've heard that.
That would not yield anything delicious. No.
Yeah. Okay, so speaking of the road between Soissons and Chateau-Thierry, which is sort of the equivalent of a state highway. It's a two-lane highway, but it's relatively fast.
Yeah.
On that road, before you get to the American cemetery, is the German cemetery. And I don't know if you wanted me to talk about that now or not.
Sure. We can talk about that briefly.
Okay. Because there's a very interesting story connected with the German cemetery, and I sent you some pictures of that. Right after World War I, the Germans were allowed to build a cemetery fairly close to the American cemetery. So they filled it up with all of their war dead. Well, when the Germans reoccupied that area in World War II, and this is why some of the graves look out of place, they went through and they disinterred any Jewish German people that they found in the cemetery. What? Yeah. And so after World War II, somebody, I think, it must have been local French or somebody went back and put the Jewish bodies back into the German cemetery. But talk about evidence of ethnic hatred.
Yeah.
That's that's so extreme. To go in there and okay, we've retaken this cemetery now. Let's get all the Jews out of
terrible.
here.
That's terrible.
Terrible.
But I mean, honestly, you could find a lot of anti-Semitism in France too at that time. It was like acceptable.
Mm-hmm.
It was accepted. You could say all kinds of horrible things about Jewish people, and in polite conversation, nobody batted an eye. We have famous authors, French authors, who wrote terrible things, and so it was just accepted, like. And now it's not near as much, especially in France and in Germany.
Well, good.
Yeah. We make slow progress, but some progress. So you talk about a B&B where you stayed, Maison Joussomme-Latour?
Yes, that place was wonderful.
Okay.
It had it was near the town square
of Soissons. Chateau-Thierry. Okay. Oh, that was the following year. Okay, so the following year you booked your hotels earlier, and so you could get closer. Okay.
Yes, and they have air conditioning. Yay!
Even in November you needed it, huh?
No. This was in June.
Okay.
No, end of May.
Okay.
End of May.
Yeah.
Just the very beginning of summer.
Okay. Yeah, it could get pretty hot at that time of year. Yeah. But even now, I mean, we're recording this late October, and it's almost summer outside. It's crazy.
When I saw the temperatures in France in the middle of this summer, it made me really doubt about whether I will ever go there again in the middle of summer. I mean, I don't like hot weather.
Yeah, right now it's not super hot, but it gets up to 80s. So 70s, 80s, and it's surprising for late October. I mean, honestly, mid-October anyway.
Well, I hope it doesn't hurt those beautiful wheat fields.
No, they've been harvested a long time ago. Wheat fields get harvested in early July, mid-July. Yeah.
Okay. So the second time, and I might add, both times that we went, because I had done a little bit of research, I knew that I had to rent a car.
Right.
So I rented a car at the Charles de Gaulle Airport, probably for way too much than I should have paid.
Oh, so you picked? You didn't just pick it up at Charles de Gaulle's; you rented it there.
Right.
Yeah,
we rented it there, and I learned the second year that probably the better thing to do is to book it in advance.
Right, you arrange that in the U.S. before you leave. Yes.
Right.
That's
and then when you get there, don't let them talk you into a bigger car because a bigger car in France, in rural France, is not a benefit.
It's a curse.
Right. Thank you. Yes, it's absolutely a curse.
Well, it's a problem because you can't. It's harder to park. It's harder to go past other vehicles. You just take up more room. If you don't need it, just stay with a small car.
Yeah. Right. Remember, these little towns in France, their streets were designed for horse carts. Hundreds of years ago. Horse carts and people, they were not designed for your BMW.
No, definitely not.
Yeah,
and if you're not used to maneuvering around small spaces, you're gonna be sweating bullets with a nice big BMW rental car. You'd be like, I'm gonna destroy the car.
It's frankly claustrophobic. Trying to drive the.
Not to me because I'm used to it, but it's what you're used to. People who come from countries where the roads are small as well. Like the English, they do fine here. I mean, it's the other side of the road, but it's fine. They're used to the volumes. It's these Americans are so used to large everything, large cars, large streets, large parking spaces, large everything. We don't have that. We have tiny everything.
Right. American cities, especially in the West, are designed to accommodate cars.
Not so much in most of France, no.
Okay. So the second time we went, we stayed in Chateau-Thierry, and I finally really got to know that town a lot better. Nice little town, not entirely averse to tourism, but you could tell that, and I figured this out by speaking to the owner of the B&B that we stayed at, that everybody kind of anticipates Memorial Day weekend, because that's when they get flooded with all these Americans that want to go and attend the ceremony at Belleau Wood.
Right. Right. And the rest of the year, it's probably a drip here and there of a few visitors, which is why they probably don't have a lot of rooms available. So you should book early. Places like that, you need to book very early because they can't have a big old Marriott hotel in the middle of rural France. They just cannot. It's not going to happen.
But I will add, there is one large American hotel chain that has a hotel outside of Chateau-Thierry, and you can tell it's mainly set up to accommodate, a couple of hundred Marines that come over every year. And they just need a really big hotel. I wouldn't advise staying at this hotel because it's not within walking distance of the town.
Ah, yes.
And and plus it's packed with nothing but Americans. I mean, if that's if that's what you want to do and go to France and just hang out with Americans, that's fine.
Yeah, but maybe not. So that's the Best Western, you said, near Chateau-Thierry.
I think so. Yeah, it's halfway out of the valley. Mm-hmm. And it's really out in the middle of nowhere. But the place that I stayed at was just wonderful, and it was right near the middle of town. They can even arrange for you to go fishing on the Marne if you want.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Now, I say you mentioned something about Joan d'Arc.
Oh yes, there's the old castle up above the town. I guess it's the castle of Chateau-Thierry. We were up there just exploring, and there's two things to see up there. One of them is the castle itself, and the other one is this bird show that they have, which was a lot of fun and very interesting, but it's only in French. Yeah. However, even with my limited French, I could understand what was going on, and
it's a bird show.
It's a very nice show. Right, and they have the birds doing tricks and things like that. Kids would like it. But as we were leaving the castle on the northeast side of the castle, we go through the main gate of the castle, and my wife says to me, she says, "Hey, what does that plaque say up there?" And I turned around, and I knew enough French to be able to read it, and it says, "Joan of Arc was here in 1429 and helped to kick the English out of this castle."
Yep, I see the photo.
Right, and at that point I realized that happened, 60 years before anybody in Europe knew that North America even existed.
True.
Yeah, so that's just, but that's visiting France, everywhere you turn there's incredible history.
It's like a time machine.
Right.
It takes you through all these other things that happened long ago that are very notable. Let's put it that way. Yeah, and it's a cool photo. Yeah. Unfortunately, it's full of construction. When you went, it was full of construction.
They were doing construction, yes.
Oh, well, it's not a pretty... I mean, the place looks really cool, but the photo is not ideal.
And it offers one of the best views of the town as well, up in the castle. Nice. And the other really great view of the town and the entire valley is that monument. I think I sent you a picture of that too. The monument to the battle concerning the entire area, and it's mainly a U.S. Army monument, although they do mention the Marines a little bit up there. Mm-hmm. And the monument is lit up at night as well, so you can see it from the town. Nice. Yeah.
Oh, and you said there was a little museum dedicated to Jean de La Fontaine. Yeah.
Yes, that's a nice little museum.
He's the French guy who adapted Aesop's fables into French.
Yes.
That we had to all memorize as kids. So.
Oh, how nice.
Yeah. So was he from there? Maybe he was. I'm going to have to look that up.
I think he spent his last years there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. Oh, and you took a guided tour of the battlefield.
Yes, I did. You can take a guided tour of the battlefield. You just sign up for it. Actually, we weren't there during a particularly busy time, so I'm in the little museum, which is across the street from the cemetery. I think it's in the old mayor's office. And excellent little museum. And you can ask to take a tour in one of several languages. And so you ask to take a tour, and they make a phone call, and I guess somebody just drops whatever they're doing, and they rush out and give you a tour of the battlefield.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah, she was a history student who had studied the battle. It was her first tour in English, but she managed to get by and explain to us everything that happened. But it was well worth it.
Yeah, that's cool.
Well worth it.
That's very nice.
Did we talk about the monument that overlooks the whole valley? Yeah. Well, I did mention that it overlooks the whole valley. You can climb on top of the monument, but underneath the monument is a new museum built by the Battle Monuments Commission, which was an excellent little museum. It's free, and it's only been open for a year, so that's worth visiting. Yeah, and I might also mention too that the Marines send over the Marine Corps band, and so they entertained the people of Chateau-Thierry for a few days before the service on Memorial Day.
Very nice.
So they set up shop in the town square, and a lot of the locals come out and stand there and kind of like, what are these people doing here?
Oh, I love Marine bands and military bands in general. They're usually really, really good.
There are two buildings in Chateau-Thierry that are dedicated to Franco-American friendship in honor of the battle. And one of them is a church, a nice little church just off to the side of the town square. And the other one is called the Franco-American Friendship Building. And both years when I've been in there, nobody speaks English. I don't get that.
Well, I don't get that either. You'd think they would look for people who...
You would think,
yes.
Yeah, you would think. They were friendly, but they didn't speak English.
That's too bad. Yeah, in rural France, you never know if the people you're going to encounter will speak English or not. I mean, it's just luck of the draw, really.
Oh, and then I'd like to mention, too, that across the street from the little museum near the cemetery is what's called the Devil Dog Fountain. And you get access to it by asking the people in the museum for the key to the gate. In the courtyard of this house, they have a free party at the end of the ceremony every year on Memorial Day. So you go down there and everybody's hanging around in their dress blues. I think I showed you some pictures. We met some local people. I got to practice a lot of my French. But also there's a fountain in there called the Devil Dog Fountain. And legend has it that if you're a Marine and you drink from this fountain, it will add 10 years to your life. So I made sure.
Wow.
So I made sure and did that.
Wow.
Yeah. One other thing that I wanted to mention too is this is kind of an odd thing, but in the town of Chateau-Thierry itself is the largest Carrefour I have ever seen in my life.
You mean the grocery store?
Yes, it was bigger than any Walmart I had ever been to in the United States. I mean, it had everything. It had a patisserie. It had a boulangerie. It had everything in there. And, I mean, I was just astounded. I didn't think places like this existed in France.
Oh, we do have giant... we have big malls and big grocery stores and so forth, It's a little surprise. So this was in Chateau-Thierry or in Soissons?
Chateau-Thierry.
Wow.
But you could put skates on, and it'd still take you 20 minutes to skate around this whole place.
Well, that's surprising indeed, because it's a small town. But maybe they draw customers from all over the area.
I think so. I think so. Yeah.
It looks lovely. The area looks very, rural and peaceful, and for all the wars that went on there, by now it looks very quiet. Yeah,
it's a very nice little town, with the river running right through it.
Very good. Well, my friend, we've been talking a long time, so I think we need to put an end to this. But thank you so very much for talking to me about this, because I would have never heard of it without your suggestion.
Well worth it for any American veteran, especially any ex-Marine, because people come up to you, especially during the ceremony, and they just start talking to you. And I don't find that in most other parts of France. I mean, people come up to you and start talking to you that are both French and American, because it's sort of a solemn occasion and people have a reason to be there.
Right, and you have something in common.
It's right. It's not exactly a tourist thing.
Right,
Right.
Thank you so much, Gregory.
Okay, Annie.
Thank you very, very much.
And November 10th is also the Marine Corps birthday.
Oh, very nice.
Yes.
Au revoir.
Au revoir.
Thank you, Caroline Rausch, Jean Moser-Hill, Denise O'Connor, and Rachel Dahl O'Mahony. Sorry about that, Rachel, for pledging to support the show on Patreon this week. Patrons enjoy several rewards. One is called French History Brief, the other Lunch Break French, and the third is a membership into a secret Facebook group, and that's for a $5 donation a month. I just released a new Lunch Break French about a sordid murder in Toulouse, no less. And that's a bit that I do in both French and English. So I read the same text in both in English. It's never very long. This one is around 10 minutes, but it is French spoken at normal speed. And that way you get to test your French comprehension. Visit patreon.com/join us to see the different reward tiers, and thank you so much for giving back. My thanks to Michael Robinson for sending in a one-time donation by using the green button on any page on Join Us in France that says Tip Your Guide. Donations of $20 and over also gets you an invite to the secret Facebook group. And if you'd like to support the show without spending a penny you wouldn't have otherwise, before you go shopping on Amazon or before you go buying your hotel rooms on booking.com, go to the bottom of any page on joinusinfrance.com and click on either the Amazon or the booking ad. Because you came to those sites through Join Us in France, I get a small commission, and it does not cost you a penny more. And it's lovely because it helps pay for the hosting and all the expenses that go along with doing a podcast like this. Thank you so much. There are big changes coming to the Join Us in France newsletter. I haven't been doing very much with the newsletter because I wasn't sure what to put there. But I've polled my followers, and now I know much better what you'd like to read about. So once a month, it'll be on the second Wednesday of each month, I will send out the newsletter, and it will feature 3 sections. One will be a section about big events coming up in France in the next month. Now, of course, it's not going to be comprehensive, but just the big ones. Number 2 is going to be a month in review. So like a few stories that dominated the news in France for the month that just happened. And number 3 will be announcement about what's new with me and Elise and the podcast. Maybe if we publish new tours and that sort of thing. If you are not on the list to receive the newsletter and you'd like to be, go to any page on joinusinfrance.com, look for the green buttons, and there is one that says extras with a little bit an envelope looking thing, and that's the email newsletter. I don't have much of a personal update this week. I haven't been anywhere interesting, really. It's still raining a lot in Toulouse. Not all day, but it rains a little bit every day. It's kind of, it's the season, I guess. So this is a silly update that I'm not sure you'll care about, but it does say something about the mentality of people in rural France. I've been walking my dog on a dirt path that goes between my village and the next village, and they've suddenly put up a big old sign that says, we're turning this dirt path, into a voie douce, a soft path, I guess you would call it. And on that very day, they started, there were big machines taking dirt around, whatever. And so I talked to the workers and said, what is this going to be? Because my first reaction was, oh no, they're going to pave this. Because you know what? If they pave it, then there's going to be cars. And I don't want them. I don't want cars. I don't want houses. I don't want nothing. I just want it to stay the same. And the guy said, no, it's going to be like it is now, a gravel path, but instead of being mostly dirt like it is today, it will actually have pounded gravel, a proper path, I guess. And I hope that's the case. And I have been talking to all the other people that I walk and that I meet, on different days, and they all had the same reaction. Every one of us was like, oh no, are they going to pave this? But it looks like actually having a voie douce is going to be less likely to have motorcycles and stuff, because in the summer, the kids who like to ride dirt bikes, they really love to go down this path really fast because it's all dirt. They think it's a game. So I think it might discourage them, because if it's a good gravel path in the future, maybe I don't know. Anyway, it's really funny that I haven't talked to anybody yet who said, oh, this is all good, they're going to make it better, more people will use it. We're all saying, no, there's going to be more people. Anyway, yeah, rural France. So I would love it if you would recommend the podcast to somebody else, because that's the only way the podcast can get around, is with you talking about it. So if you'd like to recommend it, just tell them to search for Join Us in France anywhere they like to get their podcasts, or on Spotify or on Pandora, or even with their smart home device, smart speaker device. You can find it there too. And thank you so much for listening and for spreading the word. If you have questions or feedback, please send them to Annie@joinusinfrance.com. Have a great week of trip planning, or a great week in France if that's where you are, and I'll talk to you next week. Au revoir. The Join Us in France Travel Podcast is written and produced by Annie Sargent and copyright 2019 by Addicted to France. It is released under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives license.